welcome to the social-engineer.org podcast number 141, the Human Element series. I am Chris Hadnagy, founder and CEO of Social Engineer LLC, and I've been your host for, going on almost 12 years now. And I'm joined by my wonderful co-host. You can see for the first time because we're doing our first video podcast, Maxie, the Amazing Reynolds.
I like the introduction. I accept. I'm Maxie Reynolds. I'm the technical team lead at Social Engineer. I have a background in oil and gas, underwater robotics, and quantum physics, but I did just stumble over all those words, so it's meaningless.
It's okay. And just in case anyone's confused, she didn't say underwater aquatics. It's underwater robotics.
Robotics.
Yeah. We're sitting amongst a genii. Okay. This episode is sponsored by the one and only Social Engineer LLC. We are a premier information security consulting and training company founded way back in 2003 before social engineering was even a thing, specializing in the art and science of understanding how humans make decisions and then helping you as a company learn about vulnerabilities that surround that and how you can protect your people from malicious attacks. Our services include helping corporations with phishing and vishing and social engineering risk assessments. And I know there's a ton. You can check it out on social-engineer.com. Enough about us. Let's talk about our guest. Okay, so we are at episode 141. If you've listened to this podcast at all, if you've seen me speak ever publicly, and if you've read any book past my second one, then you know this name. It's a household name for you, and that is Robin Dreeke. Robin's been a friend of mine. Oh my gosh, we're going on the beginning of training, so maybe longer than 11 years I've known Robin, and he's been a frequent guest of the podcast, but that's not just the only reason you might know him. Robin has retired from the FBI as a special agent and chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. He's made his life's work about recruiting spies, broken that down into usable steps for people like you and me, written a number of books about how to do that, including one of his latest books, breaking down 5 steps to trust and 6 signs of who you can trust. Since 2010, Robin's been working with very large corporations all around the globe and even working with small companies to help them understand how they can use these aspects. And we'll talk more about his company later on in the podcast. But Robin, thanks, man, for coming back on the show. I think this is your 5th or 6th time. Thanks for being here.
Lunch. It's just awesome as always. And yes, I want to talk about quantum physics with Maxie, though.
No, please don't, because I will be sitting here going, what's physics and quantum?
No, it's not just physics. It's quantum physics.
Quantum.
You see, that shows you how dumb I am.
Multidimensional, very interesting stuff.
That will be for another
time, Robin.
I digress. I am
in a world where we lose track so quick.
I will mentor you, Robin.
I would love
to.
Look at how Maxie helps me bring it back. Maxie, gun hands. I love it. And now we're on film for that. Okay, so today's topic, because we've talked about rapport, we've talked about trust, we've talked about your career in the FBI, but today is something brand new, and that's mentoring. Now, here we are in 2021, global pandemic. We're doing everything remotely. Why and how is mentoring even important to talk about?
Well, it's funny, because it's the next progression. You know, you and I have talked numerous times, like, well, what made you write that book, or where did that idea come from? Because life's a journey and not a destination. And so the first cult classic of It's Not All About Me on rapport, that beget trust, because once you have that first impression and you get in the door, well, now you need more than rapport, you need trust. There it is. I know I keep mine right next to me.
Wondering what Robin just talked about. It sits on my shelf within arm's reach at all times. And you can tell it has been used and abused.
Yeah, look at that. That's a good one. It's like my copy of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence.
Oh, yeah, that thing has been traveled the world with me.
I have the original that I had back in 2002 when I went through the undercover certification school. Best course I've ever given in my entire life, besides yours, of course. Was by this old salty FBI agent that was supposed to talk to us on 4 hours on elicitation and rapport and all that undercover hooky spooky spy stuff. All he did was he got up in front of the class and he said, "Welcome to the big leagues. This is now how you're supposed to educate. You're supposed to read, practice, debrief. Read, practice, debrief." And he held up that book. He says, "This will be your new first Bible." do it. And he left. And so I went out and bought the book, and there you go. It all started. So anyway, so yeah, from rapport, you have trust. From what I realized after trust was that you have to focus so hard on the other individual to understand them at that deeper level, that I realized you could start reasonably predicting what people are going to do. Basically, they're always going to act in their own best interests in terms of their safety, security, prosperity, and control, because you always emphasize that, Robert Cialdini's book. And so after that, what I started realizing, and I actually became because people started asking me about who I mentor and who were my mentors. And I hadn't really thought about that topic before. But with all the extra time I had this year to walk my neighborhood during COVID, during lockdown, I was doing a lot of reflecting on what went right and what went sideways and what were challenges in my life. And, because everything I understood, in the last bunch of years was all about relationships and building relationships and the importance of having great, genuine, deep founded relationships, because you can't do anything without relationships, was that I was thinking to myself, how is it that, I had all these goals and objectives when I was younger? And I always have this funny self-deprecating stories, about, because people ask, so how did you get to be the chief of the behavioral analysis program, the FBI? And I tell them how I failed. I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, took me next year to get in, almost next year to get out. Majored in aerospace engineering, failed out of aerospace engineering. Wanted to become a Navy pilot, eyes went bad, went Marine Corps. I mean, all these things that went sideways. And when I thought about it, what had happened was, at critical times that I did have success, is because I had, fortunately, a teacher, mentor, or guide had inserted themselves in my life. Like getting in the Naval Academy. I took the SATs 7 times just to get the application. And so what I also had, though, is I had the school resource officer that heard of Robin Dreeke. He's a good guy. He's a hard worker. He's got good grades, but not exceptional grades. And he's a bad test taker on SATs. What he did was, he inserted himself in my life, introduced me to the county executive, introduced me to the nomination process. He inserted himself and became a teacher, mentor, and guide that actually helped me get in the Naval Academy. And anytime you think you've achieved something on your own, you're wrong. There was a teacher, mentor, guide. There's someone that inspired you. So I actually looked at all the things that went right according to the plan I had. And all of those that happened and went right is because I had a great teacher, mentor, and guide. And all the times when I felt short of those goals and aspirations, like aerospace engineering. Seriously, what moron goes to Naval Academy having taken the SAT 7 times and majors in aerospace engineering? A guy that didn't have a teacher, mentor, and guide when he showed up at the Naval Academy said, maybe that one's not quite for you. Maybe you ought to try this instead. So, everything, it came down to things that went sideways were because there weren't teacher, mentors, and guides, and things that went right was because there were. And then when I thought about it as I've gotten older and progressed, and someone asked me who I teach, mentored, and guided myself, I never really thought about it. But then when I took that step back, I was like, wow, I actually do that. I have my children who, matter of fact, even today, I was texting back and forth with my son. He's, getting ready to spend his last summer at the Naval Academy. He's a junior, going to be a senior. My daughter, who's now a proud nurse, 23 years old and completely independent. And then I have these people that have reached out to me via LinkedIn. I mean, college students that want to interview me, all these different people that actually do share my thoughts and ideas based on their questions. And it was unintentional, but when you reflect on it, that's when it really hit me home that each of us, we have a responsibility, I think, and that's where I'm currently at, is we're constantly needing to be learning. That's half of it. And the other half of it is we're supposed to be constantly, imparting knowledge to others. So we're supposed to always be a mentee and a mentor. That's one of the reasons why I read so much, is because I've really realized how little I know. It was very humbling when I started reading all this past year. I quickly realized I don't have enough years left in life to learn all the things I wish I had spent longer learning. And at the same time, I feel I have a greater responsibility to be an available resource for the success and prosperity of others without expectation or reciprocity, which again is one of my core values. So long answer. I apologize. You know me, I'm the long-winded guy. That's where it came from. Very thoughtful, very thoughtful.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions I had in the middle of all that. So I'm going to kind of back up a little.
Sure.
I mean, I think we should probably start just at the basic in the beginning. What is mentoring to you? Like, what do you consider it? Like, is it hand holding? Is it walking through steps? Is it giving advice? What is mentoring?
It's a great question. I think there's lots of different levels of mentoring, not lots. I have identified like 4 levels of mentoring, but I think the level that you're talking about is what I called a beta tester. That's what I called it. That's like my wife is a beta tester. You are a beta tester. Maxie, you'd probably be a great beta tester for me too. And you've even offered it up. And that is someone who is that unconditional love as well as critic. Matter of fact, Tasha Eurich in her book, Insight, all about self-awareness, calls it your loving critic. And here's someone who is vested in your success, but is also brutally honest if needs to be as well. And so that is the greatest form of a mentor, I think. These are people that will insert themselves in your lives, not in an obtrusive way, but as an available way. They give you thoughts and opinions, not to belittle you. They give you thoughts and opinions to actually give you your own insights. They give you, matter of fact, Maxie and I were talking about this before we started. It's help you with your own self-awareness, because self-awareness is, it's bifurcated into your internal self-awareness, you know, your knowledge of self, as well as knowledge of external self-awareness, how the rest of the world sees you and your impact on it. And so a great mentor gives you some of those optics. And again, they don't do it in a judgmental way. It's very non-judgmental. It's very objective in its observance.
How can you seek a mentor out though? If you're somewhat isolated or you just aren't in a group or faction that sort of lends itself easily to what you're trying to do, how do you find somebody who's willing to mentor you, who does have the expertise that you need? Where would you start?
Great question.
Yeah. You know, when seeking a mentor, first of all, a few people consciously actually seek a mentor. And I bumped into a few of them this past year.
Yeah.
And she did a fantastic job of this. And what she did was, it was a college student and she was majoring in psychology. And she wants to work in federal law enforcement doing similar things to me. And so what she did was she went all over LinkedIn, typing in keywords, looking for people with the biographies and the ideal resume of things that she thought she wanted to be in 5 or 10 years. And she reached out. And the way she reached out, she did so using the language I always talk about making it about me rather than about herself. She didn't say what she wanted. She introduced herself. So she answered, you know, the critical priority on first contact is who you are, what you want, and when you're leaving. I know Chris knows that too, because it's Cialdini's book. It's a priority of all human beings. But she also then used the great language of seeking my thoughts and opinions, talking in terms of my priorities. And she knew my priorities was behavioral science. She validated me in the things I had done in my life. And then she empowered me with choice about getting back together with her or not. And when you reach out with humility and you're seeking the thoughts and opinions of others, you're seeking their guidance. And so in other words, you're using another priority as an assistance theme, you know, for building that quick rapport. And you empower someone with a choice about walking away or not. Few human beings will. And so what she was doing was she's constantly reaching out to people, seeking their guidance. And I responded. I gave her a few other people to reach out to as well. And so what happens at that point is you can be at a low level of mentor and guide where there's someone, if solicited, will give you thoughts and opinions and be objective for you. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if you raise it up to that higher level is that you'll get the individual that takes an interest in you, takes an interest and becomes vested unconditionally in your success. And so that's when you can really see that someone, you know, is really at that higher level. I mean, I probably partnered with 2 or 3 folks this past year, and you guys are one of them, you know, that regardless of anything that comes up, especially when the people become proactive with, they see something because they know your background, they know the things you're interested in, and they become proactive in reaching out for you and giving you an opportunity to do something, information on something, growth, and whatever it is. And one, there's not only no expectation of reciprocity, but there's no benefit to them necessarily. You know, so there's that different levels. So that highest level person is non-judgmentally vested with no expectation of reciprocity and wants to be a resource for your success. And how do you seek them out? You offer yourself up as a resource for theirs first. I mean, the greatest line I discovered this past year, and I use it very proactively all the time. Anytime I do a podcast, anytime I do anything, I say, hey, thank you so much for your time and effort. At the end of this, please take a look at my website, take a look at my content. If you think I can be a resource for you in any way, please let me know and I'd be happy to be.
I want to ask Maxie's question from a different angle because I love the question, but I want to come at it now, not as a person seeking mentoring, but as a potential mentor. Mm-hmm. So I get these requests nonstop on LinkedIn, through email, people saying, I'd love to be in the social engineering field. Could you help me? I don't know where to start. Could you, take me on the path?
I was one.
And if I said, well, okay, but Maxie's a different story, right? So we could talk about Maxie in a minute. Maxie was one, but like you said, there was a reason for me to invest in her because of the way she approached. She did everything you just said your college student that reached out to you did,
Yep.
which made it impossible for me to say no. But
Right.
if I said yes to every person that asked me that, I wouldn't have time in a day to accomplish things for SECom, ILF, my family, right? So how does a mentor, not the mentee, how does a mentor find that balance in saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you, or when to help people? Like, how do you do that without feeling like garbage? Because I feel bad every time I'm turning the college student down and saying, sorry, I can't do anything for you.
You answered your question right there. Do what Maxie did. There's not a lot of Maxies. I get a lot of requests too. And what you just articulated when saying that Maxie's a different story, yeah, you go with a different story. And the different story with Maxie is a higher level of self-awareness. So, because most of the time, as a teacher and a mentor and a guide to others, I'd say 90% to 95, maybe even 98% of the time, you're helping them overcome their own ego and vanity and insecurities. I don't have time to do that quite yet with anyone but my loved ones. And so I'm going to give you other resources for you to go to start discovering on your own. I'm going to give you books to read. You can take my online courses. You can get your own self-awareness up to a level where we can actually have a conversation that you're ready for that tough love, that you're ready for that kind of level of interaction where you're not going to be offended, where you're not going to feel insecure, where you're not going to go into self-doubt, because a great teacher, mentor, and guide can give you that loving criticism or objectivity. And a lot of people are not ready for that yet. And so they have to get to that level. So I love giving people a path to get there. But again, there's not that many people that are ready to have it anyway.
That's a really good point because, and not to embarrass Maxie, but when she approached it was with much humility and asking for assistance and knowledge, not like, hey, I'm the best in the world. I'm smarter than you. I'm prettier than you. You should hire me. That wasn't the sales pitch. It was, I really, really want to do this. And here are my skill sets. If you think they're useful, could we work together?
And knowing you, I don't know I remember when Maxie came on board, but I know how you regard people when you see that high level, when you see a deep thinker, and when you see high energy, you are automatically looking for ways to plug in.
Yeah.
And so, when you see a high level of self-awareness, in other words, this goes back to the whole human hacking thing. Do they have the ability to build relationships? Because you can teach people how to flip a switch.
Right.
I don't have time to teach you the years it might take you to learn how to develop relationships, because the ability to develop relationships takes self-awareness, where you actually have vulnerability, you have transparency, and you have the ability to, interact non-judgmentally with all these different individuals. So you can build relationships with absolutely anyone, because that's what you need to be successful in business.
That's hard to teach. You can talk to someone about being non-judgmental and stuff, but that's hard to teach sometimes, that you're trying to change people's biases.
Yes. And that's why I'm going to send you, here's the books I'm going to send you to read. Here's the classes I'm going to have you take. And I was telling Maxie, she's asking me about my current clients I have for coaching and mentoring. It was actually, I had to redo a little bit of how I do what I do, because I thought we were always going to jump right into, all right, tell me about your top 3 challenges and we'll strategize the relationships involved with those challenges. And we're going to put together some great communication. When I first doing that is that when you tell me your top 3 challenges, 90% of the people are telling me all that's wrong with the other person. In other words, they put themselves in the victim mentality, which means I got to help you overcome your ego first. And so we got to put all your strategies for communication aside. We got to work on you first. So it's been pretty fascinating.
So on that vein, if somebody came to you wanting to mentor, how can you advise someone to build genuine relationships and partnerships that will accomplish some of those goals you said? Like, how can people work on that, making them genuine, especially now in a world where many things seem to be disingenuine, especially because of the anonymity on the internet? We're dealing with 2-dimensional subjects all the time. We're only dealing with 1/4 of a body. How do we develop genuine and real relationships with all of those limitations?
I still really think my fail safe on everything, whenever I'm faced with a challenge or a question I don't know the answer to, the answer always for me to everything is I got to figure out how to be transparent. Transparency is my fail-safe answer for everything, because when you're transparent, also and transparent about myself and my own inadequacies or things I'm not as good at. And again, it's not in a woe is me, self-deprecating, I suck way. It's in a transparent, vulnerable way. Because when you demonstrate transparency and or willingness to show your vulnerability, there's nothing more genuine than that. Because what you're doing when you're doing that, you're now empowering someone else with choice, which is the whole part of, the whole process. You're giving them situational awareness of me. When I'm giving you situational awareness of me, you're able to make better decisions on how to employ me and how to rate the relationship. And there's nothing more genuine than that. Because I'm very similar to you to things I train and teach and share. And I love putting up email examples of me strategizing a great email dialogue. And sometimes people say, oh, it's just manipulation. I said, where? Because for me, manipulation is about control, and control with a lack of transparency. Because I know my definition is slightly different than yours because of what you do with social engineering. It has to be. Mine is I avoid that anything having to do with manipulation because I am always transparent. And if someone suspects manipulation, I say, here I am. What question do you have? If you leave here asking yourself, I wonder what I really wanted, I have totally failed you. Now, if I can't share something with you because of company policy or corporate policy, I'll tell you that. I'll tell you I can't share with you because of the policy, because we protect people's rights, we protect privacy and all those things. And that's still being transparent about the policy. There's no subterfuge. It's just pure. It is what it is. So I approach everything like that.
I still want to back it up and say how, though, because not a common trait for people to say, like, I'm going to be completely transparent and honest at all times. So how do you teach people to do that?
You need someone to do an after action with you after every engagement. You have to ask yourself, after each engagement, ask yourself, if you don't have a mentor guide that is your loving critic, you ask yourself, what went right and what went wrong, and what did I do to cause it? You have, this is all about taking full accountability for every single interaction and not asking why something happened, because it can send you down an emotional spiral. Ask what, because what forces you to be very, very specific with the actions you observed and the actions you did. And so when you can start taking accountability, again, get yourself out of the victim mode that they're just being mean. They just didn't like me. They're just angry. They're just insecure. Great. But what did you do to flare up that behavior? And so the first exercise I love having people do is, that are trying to have these better interactions and trying to increase their self-awareness, which is nothing more than seeing the world, how the other world sees you, is, all right, I say, put yourself in the other person's shoes. As challenging as that may be, you know exactly probably what they think of you. Do they not? I said, pretend you're them and they're your supervisor. Write your review about you right now. Positives and negatives. What would they say about you if they're giving you a fitness report right now?
Write your own review.
Yeah. From their point of view.
From your boss's point of view.
The
Maxie,
one you don't get along with.
Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen, Max.
And then as soon as you see it, then you ask the person, all right, so what are you going to do about it? That's what they think of you. They think that reason for something. And then the next question to ask is, would you agree that every human being is acting in what they think is their best interest and in terms of their priorities? Yes. All right. So what aren't you doing to support their priorities that's making them think that about you?
Yeah.
That's the force. It forces you to take accountability. Like, they don't like you. They're treating you this way because you're not doing something from their point of view. Who cares what you think? From their point of view to support them and what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
I wonder if you would agree with this. We all, in our work the other day, we read an article on anger. And when someone is angry, it is generally because you have gotten in the way of their goals or you've treated them unfairly. Do you think that if you were to assess, say someone, became sort of inflamed, they seemed angry at you. If you were to sit back and think, did I just get in the way of their goals or did I treat them unfairly? Because one's quite easy to manage and the other one may be a tendency. If you treat someone unfairly, often I would say that's bad and you'll have to work to get out of that.
Treating unfairly it can be very subjective.
Yeah.
I'm more on the, you got in the way of their priorities.
Okay.
You were not supporting them in some way from their point of view.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I actually had a friend in my neighborhood, another mentoree, without even trying. I'm out walking and he stopped and he's all excited that because he got a new job. but his current boss is not sharing things with him anymore. And, is kind of resentful that he got this job. And she said, that's not the way you're going to get promoted next time. And he's getting angry at her. And I said, well, why do you think she stopped giving you projects or stopped including you in meetings? He goes, because she's just angry. I said, really? Or is it because you're not bringing value to her? If you were actually bringing value to what's important to her, why wouldn't she include you in all the meetings and all the information? So why aren't you bringing her value to keep you included? He's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
you're right.
Should that burden always lie with the other person, though? If you can, or if it doesn't fit your goals and your needs, is it okay to say, okay, listen, well, we've lost that relationship because I can't give to you what it is you think that you need from me?
Sure, because that's being transparent. Now the other person has a choice about whether to move forward together with you or not.
Okay.
Again, because stop guessing, just ask.
Because
when you're asking, again, I keep going back to a few of my mantras for everything. One is transparency, which part of that is being vulnerable. And the other is always making sure the conversation's about them. Seek their thoughts and opinions, talk in terms of their priorities. And if you don't know your priorities, you're just guessing at them. Validate them without judging them and giving them choices. When you couple that with transparency, how could it not be a great conversation?
All of this sounds great. Like if I'm self-aware of all of that and I approach it all right, but the person I approach doesn't have the same core value system, right? So they're not thinking that way. And like, let's say that guy that you first asked, why is this happening? And he's like, because my boss is a jerk or she's just angry all the time. If he's stuck in that mindset, then the conversation won't go great. It will be very one-sided. You'll be all transparent and soft and kind, but the person responds to you in a way that maybe you were hoping they would respond different. How do you get past that?
There's only one thing left, and that is ask them how it's working for you.
Okay.
So I'm a big believer, I think it's sign 4 in sizing people up, actions, past patterns, and key behaviors. If someone is continually frustrated, the next question I ask is, all right, so what have you done differently to not be frustrated? And now if you're frustrated with an individual because they refuse to move forward, now you have to ask yourself the same question. What do I need to do differently to change our interaction? Or do I need to move on? Or do I need to have that non-judgmental tolerance of the other individual? I found that I refuse to allow people to bother me because I don't like being bothered by people. And the way I don't get bothered by people is if you're doing a behavior that I find inappropriate, that's bothersome, insecure in some way, first thing I try to do is I dive deep to figure out why you act and are the human being you are. So as soon as I started getting your context of how you view the life, like when you and I chatted on my interview of you about human hacking, one of my deepest questions I wanted to know was, who were you when you were growing up? Because if I understand who you were growing up, I have a deeper understanding of why you are the person you are today. And again, that's the whole adage of walk a mile in my shoes and see what decisions you would make. When you take a time to figure out, Max and I were talking about this before, some people I was not naturally born curious about human beings. I'm a natural born self-centered narcissist, as I always laugh about. But when I started realizing my impact on others at times was negative, that the effect that was having, again, that goes back to that after actioning yourself, those times when that was happening is because I was having this negative impact and I need to do something differently with my behavior. And so I need to understand why they were acting that way. If I understand why they're acting that way, I now understand them. Once I understand them, they no longer bother me. It's a crazy cycle. Again, every single one of these things is saying one thing: get outside yourself, be objective about yourself, and see how the rest of the world sees you. And if you don't like what they see, what are you going to do about it?
I love that. Ryan and I have been doing this thing at work where between us, but we're also encouraging other people in the company. Like if you wake up and you're having a bad day, if you just say it to somebody, like to your manager, to somebody, like, hey man, today has been a bad morning. I don't need to know details. I don't need to know what you fought with your wife or husband or boyfriend or whatever. If you want to give details, that's fine. But if you say that, then it explains any potential future bad communications for that day.
Yes.
Right. And what I found is when we weren't doing that, especially because we're virtual, I don't understand when people's communication styles change all of a sudden. So
something sideways.
Yeah. And it's funny that this conversation is happening today because just recently I started doing this thing too, that if something changes in the company with someone, I will just go to them privately and say, why is this different now? Because you were this way and now you're not. And I don't do it like, hey, why are you being a jerk? It's like, I'm confused because
touch the pain point.
you seem different. And I'd like to know if it's something that I did, or is everything okay? And the only frustration I have is sometimes people don't want to answer honestly. So then I'm stuck in the same situation where I'm like, okay, things have changed. They don't want to admit that it's changed. Something is different.
So here's a good question.
I can't force you to answer me, right? So
what are you doing to make them not want to be honest with you?
I don't know. That's
There
a
you
good
go.
question. I'd have to analyze that. Yeah, I don't know. That would have to be the next stage in thinking about that.
Because the first thing that is really amazing that you're doing a phenomenal job is what the greatest leaders do is you form a circle of trust where people feel trusted and safe. And if they don't feel safe, they're not going to share, because what you do by touching base and sharing with others what your emotional state is phenomenal. Because again, it goes back to, you need relationships. You cannot survive and thrive. We're genetically, biologically, or anything, as you know, with your writings and everything too, is we are coded to belong, and we have to feel connected. And during this last year, it's more important than ever because we don't have the physical connection we need. And so you have to reach out and touch, right? And so your mindset is phenomenally perfect in that you're trying to create a circle of trust for people to feel safe in. Now, if someone, an individual, is not feeling safe to share, that's when you ask, what are you doing not to create that safe environment?
I'm curious, what if the answer is it's something else out external?
Then that's okay. For you, at least you, because I'm a big believer in that too, is, first you take accountability for your own action. It's like if someone is having a negative reaction to me, is not behaving in a way, again, if someone went sideways or something, then I take my own personal inventory of the things I've said, how I said them, the environment I've created. I'll get other, loving critics, to give me my input, review this, take a look at this email, all these things. And then at the end of my self-analysis, it isn't me. Okay, it's them. And they just don't want to share with me. Then you just empower them with a choice. You validate, listen, I understand that you don't want to do this and you're not comfortable sharing with me. That's okay. Is there another resource that you'd like that I could get for you? Or would you like to move on with something different?
Yeah, I think that stage could be hard for many people, the self-analysis, right? Because it's easy when something doesn't go right to go, well, it's he or she's problem, right? And
there's why you need a great teacher, mentor, and guide who's a loving critic to help you with that analysis. Again, the key word there, loving critic.
Yeah, agreed. It's a phenomenal application in the whole circle to kind of think about how that works and how to apply it from a business standpoint and how much that can help.
And this actually, from a business standpoint, I've read, as you know, I'm kind of fanatical these days on reading. All the last books I've read, or most recent ones, whether it's Insight by Tasha Eurich, I'm in the middle, actually almost done with Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Hook Point, which is all about, quick marketing. Hook Points by Brendan Kane. Even though you'd think that some of these things would be very hard hitting and procedural, even Hook Point with Brendan Kane, and his biggest thing is, the greatest innovations in life happen through empathy and about others and making connections with others and understanding people's pain points and understanding what unique value you can bring to them to solve their pain points. Because, the thing I love that he said, he goes, people want to buy, they don't want to be sold to. And it's the same thing when you're offering yourself as a resource for people, even inside your own company. All you're trying to do is be a resource, and they'll buy it if they want to. And if you can't offer what they're looking for, offer them someone else or something else. Again, it's understanding them, their priorities, and being a resource for their success and prosperity. No expectation or reciprocity. I said a few times.
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Sometimes I think for most people, the truth is sort of the hardest thing to hear. It's often difficult to hear, and especially if you've asked about yourself and you're told something either you weren't expecting or that you just didn't want to hear. If that happens to someone, if you're giving someone that feedback, how do you land it in such a way that they can hear and accept, or at least process?
So first thing I'm doing is I'm assessing what level of honesty do they want. And so a lot of times you'll be able to gauge that yourself. Again, boy, I hate being subjective. I wish I could give more linear things. You gauge that by the amount of insecurities that you see them. In other words, are they constantly feeling like the victim? And so if someone is constantly feeling like a victim, the last thing I want to do is make myself look like I'm assaulting them and making them a victim in front of me. So I kind of pull back how I couch things to them. And most of the time, all I'm doing, God, boy, whether I'm doing it, I'm always doing it like this, I guess. I'm helping them be objective to see the world through someone else's point of view of them.
So it is empathy. Again, reductively, it's empathy.
That's a great way. It is all empathy, 100% empathy. Another question I'll ask is I'll ask, what do you want to hear? What are you looking to hear? Because I'll ask them, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a loving critic, or are you needing validation instead? Are you looking for results, or are you just looking to vent? I mean, sometimes I can be way off. I mean, because I have very close people in my life, like my son. I got over trying to solve my son's problems a couple of years ago, because I know he just wants to vent when he calls me. And even though I think I have all these great solutions and answers, I wait till he's done venting. And I go, did you want to talk about it? Or did you just need that?
Yeah.
Again, it's what am I now doing? I'm seeking their thoughts and opinions, validating, and power with choice about how to move forward. Constantly going back to those same four things to understand exactly where that other person is, to understand exactly what they're looking for from me in that situation. It takes a lot of observing flexibility.
I do that with my wife now. It's like when she has a problem, I'll ask, is this you want to just complain conversation, which is fine, I'll listen, or do you want me to find a solution? Right. And
look at you using that word complain.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Is such a nicer name.
Well, it is, but sometimes people just want to complain about something, and that's not about me. Maybe they just want to complain about something.
I splice words, man.
Somebody may have said something or done something that irritated her, and sometimes she wants a solution, and sometimes she just wants to talk about it. And if I know that going into the conversation, that helps so much more, because I'm not trying to come up with a way to fix it. If all she wants to do is just talk.
And see, and what did you just do there? And again, this is perfect, because if you want to just fix it, who's that about? Is it about you or about her? It's actually about you trying to solve a problem. If you ask her what she's seeking and what she needs, that's now making it about her.
I like it.
Can I just reverse back into empathy for a little second here?
Absolutely.
How can you make empathy a habit? Because I don't think I'm prone to empathy. I can do it, but it's usually after a few sort of tries at solving a problem a different way, and then I come to empathy. Then I'm like, I wonder what it's like from their point of view. How do you make that habit that's maybe your second go-to and not your fifth?
For me, anyway, it comes back to always regarding what am I doing to cause that behavior in someone else. That's the first thing. I only can observe you in the moments you're encountering me, first of all. And if I'm observing you, I'm going to observe what either the negative tells, or either stress behaviors or comfort behaviors that I'm inducing on you. And so that's the first thing I'm doing. I'm being curious about why you're reacting the way you're reacting to any stimulus. I'll start with me, because if that interaction's with me, I'll just watch you, because if you start everything with trying to understand everyone at their baseline of what their normal behavior is, then it really helps you understand where they are in their own spectrum of self-awareness, both internally and externally. Are they engaging the world in a positive manner or in a negative manner? Are they constantly complaining about what's going wrong? Are they constantly seeing the positive, what's going right? Are they blinded so much by the positive that they're not objective about the negative? I mean, so you're constantly taking in all these data points to understand where the other person is in regards to how they're interacting with the world. And just not being a naturally curious person about others, growing up, because I was more in my own survival mode, it can be learned. Again, being curious about why people do what they do.
I'm wondering, though, how you would apply Maxie's question if you weren't approaching somebody with a problem between you two. So like, Robin, if you and I never had a miscommunication, but I was just concerned because you seemed different, and not about me, but you just, I don't know, like, I've never seen you angry, but let's just say you seemed angry about things all of a sudden, and not necessarily at me. How do you then still do what Maxie asked, which is apply that empathy if you are not naturally an empathetic person?
I always take it for granted that people will act in what they think is their best interest. People will communicate in a way that they think is effective. People are going to do what they think is good for them and good for others. Mm-hmm. And so I take that as a baseline understanding of other people. And now if I don't see it that same way, I need to understand why. And how do they? I'll use a great example here, Chris. Can I use you as an example?
I'm sure I've messed up enough that you can find some.
It's not a mess up. It's an understanding. So a while back, because we're both board members, and you're the CEO and I'm a board member on ILF, and we do a lot of phenomenal things. And one of the phenomenal things we do is fundraise. And you had sent out that email about board members and the ways you could fundraise. And I did not understand a word of anything you had said. some of the technical stuff, websites and all this is beyond my understanding. I came back. I tried to strategize a very nice email saying, I'm a moron. Can you give more guidance? And you said something to the effect that, I don't know, you're good at this. Figure it out. And, which now my reaction to that is, hey, idiot, I'm looking for help here. And you're just being a D. But see, I understand your context. I understand you, and I was like, why would Chris communicate in that way? Well, he communicate that way because that's how Chris communicates from his
You are good at it. Just figure it out.
Just figure it out. Smart guy. You can figure it out, and so that's exactly what I did though. It's like, I understood what your context was. In other words, I was empathetic to your point of view. I'm busy. I understand this. You're a smart guy. Why don't you understand this? And I knew you weren't even angry or frustrated. You were just you were just being you. And so that's what having empathy is like, I wasn't angry or anything or frustrated, although the initial impulse was, but immediately goes from anytime, I guess this is a roundabout way of answering the question. Anytime I find myself getting emotionally hijacked by the way someone's interacting with me, I immediately go into empathy mode. I need to understand why I feel that way, because there's something about them, a way they communicated with me from their point of view, which caused my emotional reaction to that. And so I'm now going to dig into understanding what the other person sees from their point of view so I can overcome it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it.
So I move beyond the emotional hijacking and I move into what I always say, this goes into, leave them feeling better for having met you, is what I'm about to do or say going to help or hinder a good, healthy relationship from this point forward. So when I hit emotional hijacking, I immediately go into that, which is I go into tactical empathy, as Chris Voss will call it.
So you sort of analyze that situation, right? And you understand through empathy how Chris meant it. But in a sort of mentoring move, would you ever allow yourself to say to Chris, hey, you've answered like this. I understand it. I've analyzed it. But maybe that's not the best way to answer other people, and here's why. Is that allowed, or is it just you understand it and it lies with you now to deal with it?
I waited a long time to bring it up at a perfect time for
Was
Chris.
It today?
Yes. So here was my workaround. Chris, any idea what my workaround was?
I don't even remember this situation. So
I know you wouldn't. That's why. And I know you wouldn't. That's why I didn't bring it up. My workaround was?
Are we talking about the heroes page? Was that it?
Yes.
When I sent out the email about,
Yes.
Okay. I remember that email about setting up a heroes page, because at the bottom of that, if you don't remember, I said, if you need help, we can do it for you.
Right.
Right. So I remember that, but I don't remember this interaction after that point.
That's why I am a freak, because I overthink everything.
I'll go back and actually read it now that you're mentioning it, because I'm curious.
So here's the workaround. So Maxie, I did know from Chris's context and point of view, all right, it's done, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still feeling like an idiot. So I went to Shane.
I like that. I do that all the time.
Right. And I told Shane, I said, hey, Chris gave me a Chris answer and I don't know what I'm doing. So what do I do?
And I bet I can hear Shane's voice like, yep, I understand.
Yep. Yes. And what's that entire thing do? It wasn't a bunch of people bad-mouthing Chris. It was a bunch of people understanding Chris and helping me get through a challenge I had, with understanding, how to work this heroes program thing.
Yeah. I mean, Shane doesn't badmouth anybody. Shane's ridiculous.
No, it's changed.
When you have empathy and seek empathy, there is no bad-mouthing anyone. There's just understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Reductively, could you say, so sometimes you can get what you want or you can win? Because Chris and I have been in standoffs before where we've both just wanted to win, but neither of us have gotten what we want. And I suppose if he'd have sent that email to me and I'd said back to him, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you help me? And he'd said, no, I'm like stubborn. So instead of just getting what I wanted and maybe going to Shane, I may have then gone back at Chris. So what I'm hearing is you saying, sometimes you can get what you want or sometimes you can win. Choose the path of getting what you want and choose the path of least resistance.
All your words you're using, I'm just like, hilarious. You see the face of
Are they bad?
Win. Winning is such an ego-driven word. All right, so the first one, when you say win,
yeah.
See, this is loving critic right here.
So I don't know. I didn't feel the love. Did you, Max?
No, I didn't feel any of the love.
So the way my mind works is I don't think in terms of the win. I think in terms of how do we move forward to accomplish the objective.
It's a little like winning, but yeah.
Well, winning's so again, I'm hypersensitive. I'm hypersensitive to my own self for this. I'm not imposing it. When I think winning, I think me.
Oh.
And me is too self-centered for me, because having spent a lifetime of feeling like I've been too self-centered, maybe I'm overkilling it, but since I feel that way, I do all I can to try not to be. And so the word me becomes very self-centered. I think in terms of objectives and priorities. I'm looking for resources in terms of my objectives and priorities, and I want to be a resource for your objectives and priorities. And so in this case with Chris and ILF, the objective and priority is how do we actually increase fundraising? I didn't want to win. I wanted to be a resource for fundraising.
Yeah, to solve the problem.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if Chris communicated in a way that I couldn't get over because of my own issues, well, then I would have talked to Chris about it. But because I don't have a problem with it, because I understand and have empathy and understand Chris's communication style, I found another way to do what? Accomplish the objective, not win, to accomplish the objective and the priority.
And you've done that before with me.
Yeah.
You know, communicated like, and I have a couple examples which you don't need to go through, but where you've come up directly and just said, hey, you know, you forgot this, or you didn't say this, or I would have appreciated that. And I always appreciate that kind of communication.
Sure. Well, and there's also times when things have to be done quickly for timeliness.
Right.
Like the example used in your book of you and me in your first course.
Right.
You know, with the student.
If you did not stop me there would have been someone getting hurt, and it wouldn't have been me.
So again, what was the objective? The objective was not for me to win and show Chris how wrong he was. No, the objective was we have to maintain a good group consciousness together with a group of students and have a positive effect on them so they walk away with great. Right. So the priority was the class. It wasn't a win. It was the priority as a class. And so the only way to do that on the spot, because you were in the moment, and we've all had this, you were unable to self-correct in the moment.
Oh yeah.
So
there was no self-correction.
And likewise, I do the same thing in my own life. That's why, you know, before I send out emails, before I put anything on my website, my wife has to come in and proof everything, because if I'm emotionally attached to an outcome, the likelihood of me putting out a great product is not as good as if I had someone objectively doing it. You know, so I'm always looking for that loving critic, you know, when I'm too emotionally tied to the outcome of something.
Okay, Robin, we're coming near the time, so I want to.
I know we've talked way deep stuff. I apologize.
This is the problem when you come on the podcast. Is there's enough material to do 5 in a row. Like you unpack so many things that we can probably go for hours and just break it down. I need to make you a more regular guest, but. You got a bunch of stuff going on, right? So your people formula company, which I want to talk about in a second, it seems like it's just blossomed from when you first started it. Yeah, as you mentioned before, you were a board member on the ILF, and pre-COVID, you were like the face of our organization, going on the news, talking about us all the time. That's amazing. And you're an HHC speaker, so you're coming in and training the Human Hacking Conference, virtually, of course, this year. You're an author. How many books now? 3 books, and I want to talk if you're working on something else. It just seems like you went from, hey, I'm going to retire, quote, air quotes for anyone who's listening and not watching, and your retirement turned into like 4 jobs. So let's talk about People Formula. First of all, I want to mention www.peopleformula.com is where you go to find out about Robin's trainings and speaking and things like that. But just give us like I don't want to use the word sales pitch because that sounds dirty, but give us like a little thing. Like, what is People Formula? Why do people want to go there?
So here's my hook point.
I like that better. I like it.
So basically, if you want to learn about how to build genuine rapport, trust, relationships, and ultimately good, healthy partnerships from a global behavioral expert and master spy recruiter, that's my hook. That's what People Formula is. Basically, so my 3 values of my company are very simple. Create strong, healthy professional relationships. Do that through open, honest communication and transparency. Be an available resource for the success and prosperity of others without expectation or reciprocity. And my mission is to continually learn about all I can in the areas of interpersonal relationships and communications and relationship building. And the other half is pass that knowledge on to others. And I do that in multiple platforms on my site. Whether you want to watch YouTube videos that I have online training that scales all the way down from like $97 all the way up to thousands, coaching, mentoring, all different programs for that. And one thing I've been doing more, and actually you were the one that was the inspiration for this when you came out with Human Hacking, doing a book study. So everything I'm reading, which is generally relationship, self-awareness based, leadership based in some way, I'm putting out all the content on that. I'm trying my best to keep up with daily quotes of the day, challenges of the day. So that all goes on Instagram, but also gets fed into my website, my blog postings, and summarize all the books I'm reading, and all that's free content. So it's really as much education as I can give, scaled from here's free content all the way up if you want good interpersonal training interaction with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then in March 11 through 13, when you're teaching at HHC, what will be the theme of your content? What can your students expect to learn?
Yeah, I'm excited because, as I've told you before, this is everything I've got. So, matter of fact, I was literally thinking about this as we're talking. So I'm breaking it. So you have me for 6 hours in this, and so it's broken into 3 2-hour sets. The first 2 hours is based on, we're going to focus on rapport. Second is on the 5 steps of the code of trust. And the third is the 6 signs to sizing people up, which is predicting behavior. Those sessions are going to probably take anywhere from an hour to 90 minutes. And then the rest of that time is the one-on-one interaction, the one-on-group interaction with me, talking about things like we just did in this podcast. How do we apply all these tactics and strategies to life? So basically, I'm making it not just training, but also those networking sessions that we had at night. So you're going to have the ability to learn everything I possibly share about all these topics, in the Death by PowerPoint and Death by Robin, as I call it. But then we're going to interact with it like, all right, who's got some challenges that you've actually had in this area? Who's actually seen this work? Who's seen it not work? And we'll go anecdote by anecdote, breaking it down. And it will be from that point on in each session, each block of it, a coaching, mentoring, and teaching session.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know last year you had amazing feedback and we didn't give you nearly the time. And that was the biggest complaint. Give Robin more time. So for all of you that said that, get over to humanhackingconference.com and get into Robin's class, because that is 6 hours of straight Robin all the time.
Yeah, straight my content, but straight us. I mean, it's going to be a big us in this. And also, it's one of those things, we're going to form relationships. I don't shun anyone after contact. So anyone who wants to maintain contact and, answer questions later on in life, we'll be there.
So we got our 2 final questions we always ask. In the industry, can you name any colleagues that you really respect? Who do you most respect?
Yeah, the word most is fascinating with me. There's not a most or least in my book. There's people I adore that have been great inspirations. You're one of them. Joe Navarro, obviously. Jack Schaefer's another one. Both those were the first 2 people that welcomed me into my behavioral team years ago. If I've read your book, I'm going to count you in there. I love a lot of people. Every single podcaster I've been on with has been so gracious. Jordan Harbinger, I love Jordan a lot. Eric, and I could go on, but I'll just keep it to those 3 right now.
Funny enough, is Jack coming on the podcast soon?
Oh, do you? I'm actually doing one. So Eric Hundley and his great podcast. Next week, we're going on with a former KGB, whatchamacallit, illegal. So me and Jack are on there with him. So that'll be interesting.
Eric's podcast is awesome. Yeah, I like that.
He's a good guy. It's funny. Everyone's podcasts are phenomenal. I love the individuals. That's what makes it a lot of fun to me.
Yeah.
How about books? Can you give us a book recommendation or 2? 1 is fine, 2, whatever that you...
Sure. So I'm going to give you a couple themes here. Obviously, I think your Human Hacking book is a great current book to have. I'm going to, shamelessly plug my 3. So those are the givens. But here's some great ones that I think are fantastic primers. I will still go back to Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you're just starting out, I think that's a fantastic primer. If you're going to, and if you've already read the fantastic books by Chris and mine, so here's a couple books I've read in the last couple months that I think are fantastic as well. Jay Shetty and Think Like a Monk. It's a great book on creating a calm mind and thought process. I really enjoyed that one a lot. I was asked a lot about what I thought about Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, because I knew Chris from years ago. He actually came on my team and trained it. Chris Voss's book is actually phenomenal when it comes to strength and power of language. Realize, though, that Chris Voss does a fantastic job of teaching and training on transactional relationships and does a great job of that. I think it's good awareness. I happen to love Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. because I thought, hey, it's just going to be another military book. I'm from the military. I'll get it. He did a phenomenal job of articulating the parallels between military and really riveting stories about him and his team in Ramadi, the Navy SEAL team, and then translating that to business. And he did it in such a way that he talks about it at the granular employee level and all the way up at the 50,000 foot level, because Leif, his co-author, was actually a platoon commander when Jocko was actually a commander of Task Force Bruiser. And so it's a great example of utilizing these all up and down a chain of command from every optic. I thought it was phenomenal. And then I think Tasha Urich's book, Insight, was very good because it's all about that self-awareness. And she's a scientist and a researcher. She did a really good job on that. Obviously, I got my current ones. I've just read Hook Point by Jay Shetty, a phenomenal of understanding social networking and actually creating followings. And once you create a following, how to be a resource for that following, I thought was really good. My current one, which I'm enjoying a great deal and just about done with, also Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. He really emphasizes, this book came out pre-COVID and pre the current election years that we've had recently, and really dives deep on the power of relationships and the importance of creating those great circles of trust. So those are my recent ones I think are phenomenal primers. Each one of them is focusing on massive empathy, massive self-awareness, and how to build great trust.
Thank you. That is a huge list. I tried to
Did I wear you out? Sorry.
No, I was typing them all in. I tried to capture them all, so I appreciate that. Robin, as usual, I can't thank you enough. This was a fascinating conversation. You unpacked so many things, and I know we could have went much, much longer than
I know. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, man. It's not a sorry thing. This is the only sad point is that we haven't made a practice of doing 2-hour podcasts, but
you don't want to. Again, don't want to have death by Robin because it'll just bore people to death.
This leaves them wanting to come back for the next time.
Hope so. Hopefully we had enough linear things in there to make some of the mentoring and coaching things we're talking about actionable for others.
Yeah, hope so.
So if you want to follow any of us, you got Maxie Reynolds on Twitter is just that, Maxie Reynolds. Robin Dreeke is R Dreeke. I am Human Hacker. You can check us out on social-engineer.org, social-engineer.com. Please check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. And if you can help us out with some donations, that would just be phenomenal. Give a shout out for Clutch for giving us the opening and closing music. As always, we love those guys. Check them out on prorock.com or just listen to one of their virtual shows because they are the best band on the planet Earth. What am I missing? Okay, this is it. I guess next month on the Human Element series of the Social Engineering Podcast, you can join us for guest Ida Gumbecki. I'm not even going to tell you who she is. You're going to have to wait and see. It's going to be awesome. Okay, we'll see you there next month.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.